Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're so happy to have Moses Lunham here. He's going to be joining us for some paint afternoons with our school board. And today we are going to be doing the two-row wampum. And it looks absolutely beautiful. And it's really, really important to understand a little bit more about treaties. And that's why we have Treaty Recognition Week. Because very few of us know the importance of treaties and those relationships that were made before the signing of the treaties. And this is a really important reminder of this very painting of those promises that were made between Indigenous nations as well as the new nation, the European nations that came here to what we now know as Canada or Turtle Island. So Moses, welcome. We're so thrilled to have you. We've been on many paint nights with you in the evenings over the winter, and thank you again for all of that. And we're really looking forward to having more paint nights with you over the course of the winter as well. But again, students, welcome. We're so thrilled to have you here with us as well. And I'm just going to turn it over to Moses, and Moses can lead the session, introduce himself, and tell him what we're going to be learning today. So Moses, you take it away. Thanks again.
Miigwech, thank you, Sherry. Thanks for having me. And yeah, bonjour, hello, everyone. And thanks for having me as part of your school day today. I'm quite excited to come and share with everyone once again, and of course, to create some art today. And just a little brief history about who I am. For those, this may be your first time taking in one of my classes. I'm from the community of Kettle and Stony Point First Nation. My community can be found on the southern shorelines of Lake Huron. And we're situated just a little bit in between Sarnia and London, Ontario. We have a beautiful beach here, beautiful sunsets, and really quite blessed to live in this community, in this area most of my life. Now, I've been a lifelong artist, and making art has been it's been quite a journey for me. I've learned a lot of things as I was growing up, and my journey started as a youngster from a very young age, from the time I could pick up a pencil, a marker, or crayon, or even that paintbrush. And that's exactly what we're going to do today, is going to do some painting. And I've been very fortunate that, I was able to learn and connect to my culture at a young age. Growing up, my parents would take me to many powwows, and I would see what's going on there, and I'd meet a lot of people. And over the years, they would share many things with me, a lot of stories for sure, a lot of teachings, and just being able to put my work out there and sharing with others and creating that dialogue. So that's exactly what we're going to be doing today as well, is that I'm going to help you recreate this painting here so that you will be able to share in the learning as well. So you will be able to share what you've learned today with your own family, your own friends, and like I said, hopefully it creates some dialogue so that we can certainly learn a lot more about treaties. Yeah, I'm quite excited for this week. Treaty Recognition Week is very important. I think about the times when I was growing up and going into school, we never had anything like this. For the longest time, I didn't know what treaties were. And even a wampum belt. Yeah, I've kind of heard about it a little bit. I always thought it was about something about money or something like that. Well, it is kind of about money, but I really didn't know what the wampum belt was until a good number of years ago. But today we're going to be focusing on one of many wampum belts that were made. And as we know, the treaties, the wampum belt is a visual reminder of those agreements that that Indigenous people made with with the settlers. And today we're going to be focusing on this particular wampum belt here. It's called the two-row wampum. Very significant belt in this area. The history behind this belt is that it came about way back, going back to 1613. That's like, oh wow, 400 years ago, when this belt was first made between the Haudenosaunee people. Here in this area of southwestern Ontario, we can find that a community, a bigger community of Haudenosaunee people is over by Brantford, Ontario, and the Dutch settlers way back in 1613 once again. And it's a very unique belt. Looking at it, it's really quite simple, but just to talk about how those belts were made as well. So a person such as myself, like an artist, would construct or make these wampum belts, and they're really interesting when we can look at them. What you may ask, well, what they're made of, right? So one of the things that they're made of, the main component is there are two shells that are needed to make a wampum belt. The first one's called a quahog shell. Not really found in this area, but through trade, indigenous people had their own economy. They would trade things, and they really liked the quahog shell. And it's like a purple shell that's found on the eastern shorelines of Turtle Island. So they would take that shell and they would make the beads, the purple beads that you would see in the wampum belt. Now, for the white shells, they would use a cowrie shell. Once again, they're really hard to find any of those around here, more or less along the eastern shoreline. Once again, we get those shells from the ocean, and probably you've seen these shells before. It's those kind of, you find if you walk along the shoreline, you pick one up, you can hear the ocean. Yeah, I think we have a good idea of which shell we're talking about. So those two shells were used to make the wampum belt, and of course, the string was probably made from the deer, right? So yeah, deer was very important. Yeah, we used all the deer for many things. So yeah, so that was what the wampum belts were made from. And like I said, they're very, very significant because they would document what the treaties were about, those agreements. And so this one symbolizes, is very, very interesting when it was explained to me what it was about, because all I could see was just these two rows of purple wampum. And I thought, okay, well, what's the story behind it? What's the meaning? What's the symbolism behind this very simple design? And what I learned is that, well, it symbolizes a river. So think about it, a river. So this is a river. And these purple wampum beads, they represent that path that they're traveling down this river. And it was explained to me that they were boats. Actually, yeah, they were boats. So here we have the settlers in this style of boat here. I'm just going to hold that up real close to our screen here to get a good look at it. Now, I got this design here from looking at other types of wampum belts and how they were depicted in some of those wampum belts. And it looked very much like this, very, very simple design. And then, of course, up here, I think we've kind of seen this design before. That's a canoe, right? So yeah, so this would represent the indigenous people and, of course, those settlers traveling down the river of life. And another thing about it is that, yeah, you can see that they go in a straight line, and that symbolizes that their paths would never cross. They would never, that boat wouldn't go over into this pathway or vice versa, right? They would never interfere, that they had their own way of living. And that's what's inside that boat, especially for indigenous people. We had our own government. We had our own way of our culture, our own way of sharing the land. And that's what's inside that boat. So yeah, so by creating a wampum belt, they recognize that, and that's how the design for the two-row wampum came about. So very, very interesting, to study this belt. And like I said, I never knew about this type of belt a long, long time ago, and I'm happy I learned, because yeah, it certainly is important when we think about, today's communities and, what's going on. And it's very important to understand how treaties are still very important today. And so there's a lot to learn. All right, so now going back to our art. So being an artist, I've always used art as a means of expression of what I've learned. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to create this painting, and I'm going to show you how to do it by step-by-step instruction. So let's get ready to paint. Before we do that, though, let's go over our art materials that we're going to need for today, so that we want to make sure that everybody has everything that they need to do our project today. All right, let's start with our paint colors. Today, we're going to only need 4 colors to create this painting. This one here, we'll start off with the most important color is the color white, okay? We're also using acrylic paints, my favorite type of paint to use, very easy to use. It's water-based, it dries quickly, and it's also known for its really, really vibrant colors. So definitely some white. Let's see here, what else do we need? Yes, red. Gonna need some red. Purple, and black. All right, so there you go. There's our 4 paint colors that we need for today. And just one more thing I want to mention before we get into our painting is that just be careful about how we're going to use this acrylic paint, because if you do get it on your clothing, make sure, it won't wash out. So just be careful about that. So don't get it on your clothing as best you can. If you do have long sleeves, consider rolling them up so that you don't get any paint on your sleeves. Today I'm wearing short sleeves, so I don't have to worry, but for some of us, we're into the fall season here, so I want to make sure you don't get any paint on your nice sweater or anything like that. So consider, rolling those sleeves back. Let's take a look at what else we're going to need. Okay, so we're going to need a cup of water. Okay, 1 cup of water. I understand your workstation may be a little bit tight. You may not be able to accommodate a second one, but if you do, that's good if you can do that. 2 cups of water, but for sure, 1 cup, we can get by with 1 cup. All right, let's see what else we're gonna need. Also, you should have some paper towels. So yeah, anytime you have that cup of water on the table, accidents do happen. So it's good to have this on hand to clean up a mess if you accidentally knock that cup over. Okay, let's see what else. Paintbrushes. Let's talk about our paintbrushes today. So I'm going to recommend, if you do have them, 3 brushes for today. So we're going to need a large one, a medium brush, and a smaller brush. I'll just show that up there to get a good look at how they look. All right. Now I understand it can be a challenge for many of us, especially with the schools in terms of art supplies. If you only have 1 brush, we certainly can do this painting with 1 brush. Like for example, if I only had to use 1, I would say this medium brush could do it for me. All right, so no worries if you don't have all 3. If you have 1 or 2, that's great. If you have all 3, terrific. All right, let's see what else we have here. Yeah, paper plates. So this is going to be our paint palette. I'm going to recommend 2, okay, just to be on the safe side. We are going to be mixing some colors, and sometimes some of us, we get kind of carried away. For example, sometimes I want to mix 1 color, and the next thing you know, I look and I'm using up half a plate for just 1 color. So have 2 paper plates if you can. And now this puts us down to our painting surface. So once again, just thinking about the supplies of what we have at hand, what we can get. And maybe some of us are painting on paper today. That's okay. Bristol board is another good option. But if you do have something like, for example, D-canvas, that is great as well. All right, so let's see here. Now, looking at the original, the size here is 12 inches tall by 16 inches wide. That's the original. I'm not going to use the original today. I'm going to downsize. I'm going to pull out my canvas that I have behind me just to give you an idea. All right, so today I'm going to be a much smaller canvas. I'm going to go with 11 by 14. Well, once again, maybe, for example, some of us are using 8 by 10. That's fine. 8.5 by 11 with sheet of paper. Yeah, so whatever you have. Now, we are also going to need to have our painting surface in a horizontal format. So what I mean by that is to have your long side of your painting surface horizontal as opposed to vertical. This is called portrait. But today we're going to be using a landscape setting. All right, so there you go. So there's all the art materials that we need for today. Now we're going to get set and get ready to create. So let's do that. Let's get things situated here. All right. Let's take one more close-up look at this painting. And as I mentioned, this is a step-by-step process. So I'm going to walk you through and recreating this painting here. And we're going to start right here at the bottom here. Or sorry, at the middle. We're going to establish this line right off the bat here. And we're going to be mixing a color as well. And that color is going to be the color gray. Okay. So down here, this painting features the 2-row wampum belt. And this is only a section of it, right? This is not if the real thing would be much, much longer. And also there would be some fringes on the end of the wampum belt. But because we're, into a size here that doesn't allow us to show everything, as long as we got the gist of it, the most important part about it. And that is those 2 purple bars of color. And then of course up here, we have a lot of freedom in how we can interpret that by creating that river, that purple path, and those 2 boats. Okay, let's get right into it here. Let's take, all right, once again, working with what we have. I'm going to go with one of my larger brushes here. So maybe you have a medium. That's all you have. What do I want brush? Let's go with that large brush for me. And we're going to make that color gray. So we're going to need to add some white. Okay, so I want a good amount of white on my brush, or sorry, palette. And then of course, I'm going to use a very, very small amount of black. So I'm just going to put a little bit over here, just to, we don't need too much black today. So I'm just going to put it away from the white. And now we're going to make that gray color. So what I want to do is take my big brush. I'm just going to take a very, very small amount of black. Right? You can see, yeah, I don't have too much on that brush. Now I'm going to mix this in here. Okay, and what I hope to do is to make a light gray, a light gray. I'm going to mix that together. Let's mix that. Okay, that is looking pretty good there. I like this gray. Another thing we have to consider is making enough paint to do the job. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking I could use a little bit more. Maybe look at yours and kind of compare it to mine. You might have the same amount. Let's make just a little bit more. So I'm going to add some more white to this and a little bit more black. I want to make sure I don't run out of this color. So just a little bit more white and a little bit more black. Let's mix that up once again. Yeah, because it's not fun to run out of paint and you have to try and match the color simply because you didn't mix enough the first time around. All right, there we go. That is looking pretty good there. A nice gray color too. It's a little darker, but that's all right. All right, there we go. I'm happy with that. My brush is loaded up with paint, and that always happens when you mix a color. That brush gets a lot of paint in there. So there's lots of paint in this brush. All right, let's take a look here. As I said, we're going to start right in the middle of our canvas here. We're going to create this horizontal line all the way across. So a little bit of a challenge right off the bat here. And what we can do is, if you want to start out just to kind of get things measured out here a little bit, find the center of our canvas. Let's make 2 points right here. Okay, find the center of both ends. And now let's take that big brush and let's just go all the way across. Right, like I said, a little bit of a challenge here. Just take your brush, drag it along slowly if you want. Now, if you find that the paint is not applying as smoothly as you like, once again, remember, this paint is water-based. We can thin this out. So take your brush, add a little bit of water to that paint, mix it up, thin that paint out a little bit. This way, that paint will apply a lot easier. All right, so this is pretty good here. So I'm happy with this. I'm going to straighten it out a little bit. You may be wanting to do the same as well. Like I said, a little bit of challenge here. Yeah, that looks pretty straight there. I'm going to hold that up there. Yeah, that's pretty straight here. Now, I want to do 3 bars of this gray. So this is my first one here. I'm going to need to put another one here and another one here. So I'm looking at this and looking at the amount of space that I have to work with. I'm going to need to make this gray bar a little bit thicker. So that's what I'm going to do. So do a little bit of assessment of how much space you have. Okay. Look at it and see if you need to make that gray bar thicker. Let's do that. All right, so there we go. That is looking much, much better. All right, so there's our first step. The first thing we have created in that 2-row wampum belt. Now, as I mentioned, we need to make 2 more, 3 altogether. Let's start at the bottom. So I'm going to go right here, and I'm just going to go all the way across. Now I want to kind of match it up the same thickness as this. All right, so I'm just going to paint that real quickly and take a close look. You can see that is pretty close to the top one. All right, so try your best to match it up, and let's go all the way across. Okay, there we go. There's my 2 gray bars. Once again, also really spread that paint out. We want a nice even coat of paint. All right, so if it feels a little bit lumpy or built up, yeah, just push that paint back and forth. Let's get a nice, smooth, even application of paint, because generally acrylic paint will take about 10 to 15 minutes to dry. And that's very important because we're going to come back and we're going to create those white wampum beads. We're going to paint right over top of that. All right, so now we're down to our 3rd and final gray bar. So I'm just going to determine where the center is. All right, and now I'm going to go all the way across, just like I did here. And if I need to make this thicker, I think, which I do, I need to make this a little bit thicker here. Okay, there we go. I am finished. Definitely a challenge to create these 3 gray bars here. The good thing about today's event or class is it is being recorded. So at any time you feel that some of our students are a little bit struggling with this step here, we can always pause the video, let everybody catch up at the same time, and then we can move on to the next step here. So. Okay, there we go. We are finished that, the gray bars. And once we're done that, let's clean our brush here. So let's take all that excess gray paint, grab yourself a piece of paper towel, wipe off the excess. All right, so that big brush holds a lot of paint. You can see I'm squeezing it out too. Yeah, put your fingers together, your thumb and your index finger. Let's squeeze out that paint. Let's get it into the water. Okay. All right, that looks pretty good there. Nice and clean. If I want to make sure, wipe a little bit excess off on here. All right, good to go. Nice and clean brush, ready for our next step. All right, let's see what we're gonna do next. All right, so what we're gonna do is very similar to what we did with the gray. We're gonna start with the blue. So looking closely here, yeah, once again, very much like we did with the gray paint. 1, 2, 3, 3 bars of blue. So let's do that. Okay, so let's grab some blue paint. Now we're going to use it straight out of the bottle. We're not going to mix it or anything. Okay, so whatever color blue that you're working with, let's use that straight as is. Let's continue on with our big brush here. Very much, yeah, exactly the same what we did with the gray. All right, so I'm going to get some paint on that brush. All right, I'm going to turn this around, doing 180 degrees here. And now I'm going to start right here. Here's my starting point. I'm going to get that pretty close right up to the gray there. Okay, so I'm just going to go take that all the way along the edge of the gray. Okay, so that's a good start. I got it really nice and close here. A nice clean edge as well. Now I want to make this the same as the gray in terms of thickness. So I'm going to need to build and add more blue here. Try and match it up. Okay, so there's our first blue bar. Let's go down to the bottom just like we did with the gray. I'm going to say it's that thick right there. Lots of room in between. And let's just take this all the way across. So yeah, once again, what we're doing here is we're creating that river of life. Okay, so there's the second blue bar. Now for my third and final. Just like I did with the gray. Take that all the way across. Okay, so there we go. Now, that was a good second step as well. So once again, pretty challenging making these lines consistently. Certainly is a challenge. Now, let's take a look at what we're going to do next. All right, so we got all our bars here, gray and blue. Now, we're going to continue on filling in these bars now. So with the color purple. So we have 4 places. 1, 2, 2 in the white, or sorry, 2 in the gray and 2 in the blue. So of course we don't have that color purple, but we have the paint colors to mix that color. And that is quite easy. All we need to do is mix some red with some blue to make the color purple. Okay, so I'm going to take some red here. I'm going to put it right beside my blue here. All right, that's a pretty good amount there. That's almost equal amounts here. That's looking pretty good there. So I'm gonna mix this together and see what I get. Looking pretty close in equal amounts. Okay, looks very, very good here. It takes a little bit of time here to mix these 2 colors together, especially when you have a lot of paint. So yeah, it takes a little bit of work here mixing these colors together. But yeah, this is looking good here. I'm quite happy with this purple. All right, so that once you got it thoroughly mixed, you can kind of assess it. If it needs a little bit more blue, for example, it may look a little bit on the reddish side, like a maroon color. You may have to add more blue, and vice versa. All right, so there we go. So just get the right purple that you want. All right, there we go. That's more than enough as well. And now I'm ready to fill in those 4 bars. I'm going to start with the gray first, simply because it's probably dried. Yeah. It looks good here, nice and dry. You can overlap into the gray if you want to a little bit, just to kind of make a little bit of a cleaner edge if you want. Okay, so there's one. 3 more to go. Yeah, so when I think about, as I'm painting here, I think about especially how, once again, going back to how those wampum belts were made, and especially all those little beads that were handcrafted by hand. Because like I said, this belt is like 400 years old. Certainly not using the machinery or the methods that we use today. Yeah, these were made handcrafted by hand, and that's just amazing to think about the amount of work that goes into making a wampum belt to get every bead consistently the same. Certainly takes a lot of skill to do that. Now, another question you might be thinking about as we're working away here is, where can we see wampum belts, right? Are they still around? Do they still exist? And yes, they do. For example, one of the another important wampum belt that you may or may not have heard of, or you may have in years past, is called the dish with one spoon. Very, very significant wampum belt. And actually, you can see that belt at a museum at the ROM in Toronto. So that is where it's located. So yeah, so wampum belts still, the originals are still around. You can, they're at the museums. Now, I don't know how often they put them on display, but certainly is worth looking into as to where they can be still found today. Today, we have what are called replicas. So for example, if you go to one of our social settings called the powwow, you may see an artist or an artisan there, especially once again, at one of the Haudenosaunee communities, for example, Six Nations, which is over by Brantford. We were talking about that earlier. And often that was the very first time I saw what are called the replica wampum belts. And of course, they were made of beads that were, crafted or made using modern technology. But it was pretty interesting to see them. That was my very first kind of introduction to knowing that there were many, many types of wampum belts. So those replicas are, they're out there. They're, showing everybody that there's just not one. There are many, many wampum belts. Okay, there we go. There's my 4 purple strips of color here. And that is a mighty fine start to our project here. And I hope you're doing well so far. Like I said, pretty challenging stuff here, making these lines consistent. All right, so once again, you can see I'm cleaning up my brush. I'm still going to continue probably working with this brush, or for the next step, maybe consider downsizing to a medium brush if you have it. So we'll get ready for that next. But for some of us, maybe only have one big brush, and we certainly can do this if we only have one brush today. All right, once again, for those who may need a little bit more time, consider pausing the video. And for those of us who are ready to move on to the next step, let's get ready to do that next. Okay, let's take a look at what we're going to do next. We're going to go back to working on the gray area of our 2-row wampum here. Let's take a closer look at what we're going to do next. So we're going to be using the color white, and we're going to make these individual brush strokes that you can see here. Okay, using our big brush or our medium-sized brush to do this work. Okay, so we're going to go all the way across here. We'll start here at the bottom, then we'll work on the inside and at the top to finish things up here. All right, so we're going to need to add some white. And once again, consider using our medium brush or our big brush to do this work. All right, let's look at my paint palette. I definitely don't have any room for any white because once again, going back to how I was mixing colors and using up half a plate. Yeah, I don't have any room. So I'm going to go to my second paper plate now and add some white. Okay, now to make a decision. So, like I said, you can continue working with the big brush, or you can move on to or downsize to medium brush. I'm going to give that, let your instinct kind of go with what you think will work best. I'm going to start things out with my big brush just to see how it goes. You may want to do the same thing, just to try it, see how it will work. And let's get ready to make these little white wampum beads. All right, so there we go. I'm going to put a little bit of white paint on here. Now to the gray here. All right, so like I said, we're going to start here on the left side. I just want to do a little brush stroke like this. And there's my first wampum bead. So just using the tip of the brush, put that in place right here. Leave a little space in between each brush stroke. And let's move all the way across, creating these white wampum beads. Okay, there we go. There's the bottom row. All right. Now I'm going to try the middle. So I'm going to go back this way. I'm going to go this way this time. I'm going to give this a try. Right, there's one there. All right, there we go. Good start. I'm going to go all the way across. Okay, it's coming together here. Definitely that white makes a big difference here. All right, I'm going to go third and final row here of white wampum beads here. All right, that is looking good here. And that's all we have to do for the gray area. Now, let's take a look what we're going to do next. And let's go to this right here, this purple now. All right. So as you can see, we're going to do very much the same thing what we did here with the white. We're going to do this with a light purple. So we're going to need to add some white to that purple. So I'm going to go back to my first paper plate here, or I could take a little scoop of this purple here. I can do that as well and move it over into my second plate. Take a little bit of white, mix that together, and that's going to be my highlight color. Once again, I just want to make sure you mix up enough as well. So I'm going to take another little scoop of this purple here and add it over here. Yeah, very important to make sure you mix up enough. All right, so a little bit of white here. I'm going to move this over into here. I may need a little bit of white paint as well. You may have to do that as well. Add some white. All right, that is looking good. All right, so nice light purple. I think I have it thoroughly mixed. And now we're ready to create those beads, wampum beads. Lots of paint on that brush. Okay. All right, so I'm going to start right here. I'm going to go this way again. All right, so that's a good start. I'm just going to go all the way across. Now, don't be too concerned if they don't line up perfectly. That's okay. We're just, like I said, art is a means of expression. It just doesn't have to be perfect. All we're doing here is creating an expression of what that 2-row wampum belt looks like. All right, one more to go, all the way across. And there we go. That completes the 2-row wampum belt. All right, guys, I hope you're doing good so far. Hope you're having fun. I certainly am. All right, so the next half of our painting, finishing up the blue area with the purple rose, is a little bit more fun. It's a little bit more free. This is a little bit more precise in getting all of these little brush marks just in perfectly. But here it's a little bit more free in terms of our brush stroke, because what we're creating, once again, is creating that river of life. So it gives us a lot of freedom. Now looking at this space here, I'm thinking that we certainly still can use the big brush if we need to. If we only have one brush, we're going to use more the tip of the brush so in order to do a little bit of fine detailed work. But if you do have a smaller medium brush, this is the time. Let's downsize to this brush here to do this work. Okay, let's take a look at the top half of our painting. Let's continue working with the purple. All right, so let's take a close-up look here. As you can see, I'm putting some light purple in here and also a highlight. So, medium brush. I'm gonna go back to this one here that we've just used for the wampum belt. So I'm gonna add some of this light purple onto my medium brush. And like I said, it's a little bit more free in terms of our brush strokes here. Remember, think about, we're creating that river, that water. So we want to show a little bit of movement here. Okay, so you can see I'm keeping my brush strokes horizontal. All right, I'm not going up and down. All right, creating it like this. Remember, we're creating water. So we want that flow of water, that movement. And how we do that is by creating some horizontal brush strokes. Okay, so that looks pretty good there. I'm happy with that. So there's the first one. I'm going to do the same thing right above it. All right, so as you can see, I'm adding these brush strokes. I'm still leaving some of that original dark purple exposed. I'm letting it peek through. Okay, there we go. I'm pretty happy with that. Now, to even make this a little bit more dynamic, let's go back to the original. And yeah, you can see I've added some brush strokes of even lighter purple. So a little bit more white. Just a small amount is all we need. I may even use whatever's on my brush here, just add some white to that. All right, so these highlights are just here and there. Not as many brush strokes as what we've been doing, so we don't need a whole lot, just a small amount. So like I said, this is the highlight color. You think about when that sun hits that water, it creates a highlight. All right, so I'm gonna continue on here, just add some brush strokes here. Once again, horizontal brush strokes, right? We're creating the movement of that water, that river of life there. So just a little bit of highlights. And now do the same thing up here. And that will create or finish off our trail, those two paths that are traveling down that river of life. Staying parallel, not crossing over into each other's path, representing the past, the present, and the future. Okay, so once you are completed that step, let's clean that brush up. Get a little bit of paper towel, wipe off the excess. Get it into our water here and clean it up a bit. And we'll get ready for that next step, which is working with the blue. Okay, so let's continue on working with the blue. So we're going to need to add some more blue to our paper plate. And as well, some white. So we'll get ready for this next step here. So very much like we did with the purple, let's look at the original. Same idea, we're going to mix up a light blue, just like we did with the light purple. Put that in there, add a little bit of white to the light blue, create some highlight color, just like we did with the purple. All right, let's start off with a little bit of a light blue. So a little scoop of white. I'm going to add that in here just to start things out off. All right, I'm going to add a little bit more to here. I just want this a little bit lighter. All right, there we go. That's a good looking blue right here. Nice water color, color of water. Think of that. Yeah, the color of water. That's a nice blue. All right, so our 3 bars of blue. Let's create this water. Once again, horizontal brush strokes here. Leaving some of that original blue in the background peeking through. There we go. There's 1. 2 more to go. Okay, there's the blue, light blue. And now for that highlight color, once again, I'm just going to add a little bit more white to this light blue. Let's create an even lighter light blue, a real light blue. And I'm going to sprinkle that in some of those 3 bars of blue. All right, so with that final highlight, there's our river of life. And now we're ready to create those 2 vessels, those 2 boats. Okay, let's get ready to create those 2 vessels. Let's take a look at the original first. All right. So as you can see, we have the two boats here. And you can also see that, well, they're actually in the same position, equal position. One isn't ahead or behind one another. The other one, they're in the same exact spot. So that's very important as well, because this represents a period of time. We're at the same time frame, right? In the present. So we're moving down that river at the same time. No one's getting ahead or falling behind. And that's also very important. So when we create this, make sure your boats are above one another. And we're going to start with the easiest one first here. We're going to start with the canoe. So I'm going to show you how to make that. Okay, so, all right, I'm going to go back to my first paper plate here. I still have some good black here. That's enough here. Now, we can continue working with our medium brush if we want, or like I said, if you do have the luxury of having a smaller brush, this is the time to use that little brush, okay? Because we're going to get into some detailed work here. So medium or small brush, all right? And I'm going to go with the medium just so that there may be some of us who, that's all we have, right? So, okay. Well, my paint is drying up here a little bit. I may want to get a little bit more fresh stuff here. So I'm just going to add a little bit more black here. There we go. Yeah, it's been sitting there for a while. It dries quick. Like I said, it doesn't take very long. Okay, so there we go. A little bit of black paint. All right, let's take a close-up look at this canoe here. We're going to start right here at the base, well, the middle part of the boat here. So we're going to create like a rectangle right here. A rectangle. All right. So I'm going to find the center of my painting. You could put a little mark there if you want, just to kind of let you know where the center is. And like I said, we're going to create that rectangle. The good thing about this medium brush, yeah, I got some good width to it. So yeah, I'm just going to spread this out here. A little pressure here will fan out those bristles and make a nice thick line. That's the good thing about the medium brush. Little brush may take a little bit more work. I'm going to bring that right up to here. Yeah, that's pretty good right there. I'm going to work on the bottom here a little bit. There, that's a little better. All right, so the next step in creating this canoe, I'm going to do some little vertical lines here, straight up and down, right at the corner of this rectangle. And as well, you can see, I'm going to turn my brush sideways here a little bit. When I do this, I can create a thinner line. So yeah, you see that brush? I've been using it the full width to create this rectangle. But if I turn that brush sideways, you can see how thin that brush looks. Yeah, see, yeah, right there. Nice and thin, therefore I can make some nice thin lines just like this. Now, I'm going to create the ends of that canoe just by creating a half a circle. Like something like that. There we go. A little bit of like a curved line, half a circle. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side over here. And by doing this, this will complete the shape of the canoe. All right, so once we've done that, now I can fill these two spots in. Solid black, and that will complete our canoe. A little bit more challenging with a bigger brush, maybe a little bit easier with the smaller one. That's the difference. Okay, the canoe, very, very important. Once again, thinking about, what that symbolizes, what's inside that canoe, right? We talk about our culture, what's in there, our languages, our way of life. All these things are in that canoe. Okay, now we're creating our second vessel. Let's take a close-up look at it. All right, once again, drawing inspiration from looking at some of the wampum bouts and seeing how the boat was depicted on those wampum bouts, and it looked very, very similar to this. Really kind of like, we're gonna start with this shape right here, much like we did with the canoes, like a rectangle. All right, then we're gonna put another little rectangle up on here, a little vertical line here, and a little line out here. That's the front part of the boat, and of course the mast. All right, starting right here, creating that rectangle. All right, once again, make sure it's in alignment with the canoe at the top. We want these lined up pretty good here. So I'm just going to create that first rectangle. Okay, so at the back of the boat here, I'm going to create that smaller rectangle. So a little bit of challenge here with the medium-sized brush, but let's see here. Once again, turn your brush sideways. This will help you create a thinner line. All right, there we go. Smaller rectangle. And now for that little detail, little vertical line here at the back of that little rectangle right here. Straighten that out a little bit. All right, that's good. All right, I'm gonna do the front of the boat, just a simple line like this. I'm gonna turn my brush sideways here. That's the very front of the boat. And now all I have to do is create the sail. So I'm gonna create this vertical line first, and it looks like a little triangle right here. And that's gonna be our final detail for our painting for today of the two-row wampum and that river of life. Once again, when we think about treaties and they were made in mutual peace, respect, and friendship. And yeah, when we talk about treaties, those are the things we think about. And yeah, beautiful river of life. All right, guys, so there we go. There's our project for today. I hope you enjoyed today's workshop, having fun and creating and expressing what we've learned today about the two-row wampum and thinking about treaties. And be sure to share it with your family and friends.